Good day, Sir Carlo, and to our panelists, Ma'am Lovely and Ma'am Sairi. We are the researchers of this study, Cristine Jane Cabales, Thom Irvin Cervantes, and yours truly, Princess May Bersabal. Our research entitled A Fight for Survival, the Impact of COVID-19 Crisis to the Livelihood of Ambulant Vendors in Tagum City. COVID-19 pandemic affects human health and the global economy. Its evolution is unpredictable, making it hard for governments to provide response actions suited for all populations. Meanwhile, informal street workers carry on with their labor despite contingency measures to sustain their lives. Some vendors began venturing out after a few days without permission, and after a few weeks, the government eased restrictions and essential vendors were being permitted to vend. Also, with the lockdown still partially in place, the number of buyers has gone down and so have earnings. This COVID-19 pandemic had led to a dramatic loss of human life worldwide and presents unprecedented challenge to public health, food systems, and the world of work. The economic and social disruption caused by the pandemic is enterprises face an existential threat. Nearly half of the world's billion global workforce are at risk of losing their livelihoods. Informal economy workers are particularly vulnerable because the majority is lack social protection and access to quality health care and also have lost access to productive assets. Without the means to earn an income during lockdowns, many are unable to feed themselves and their families. For most, no income means no food. This crisis became a severe burden for them and left no option for generating income. In order to combat the economic crisis during this lockdown, they have undertaken different survival strategies, which includes maybe spending savings, taking loans from informal sources, and availing financial support from others. When government exempted the lockdown, the vendors have returned to work despite the health risk. Yes, the health risk to avoid the situation of further impoverished and starvation. Furthermore, this is a qualitative study with phenomenological approach. Our participants are all ambulant vendors here in Tagum City. And the reason why we chose them as our participants, it is because we can't deny the fact that they are one of the most affected group in the society. And this topic is also one of the alarming cases, not just here in local setting, but also to the entire world. This study focuses on what is the impact of COVID-19 to the livelihood of ambulant vendors. The main purpose of this study is to recognize the impact that ambulant vendors experience in COVID-19 crisis, specifically here in Tagum City. This is also to collect information about how they view, how they adjust to the new normal. Additionally, this is also to search answers on what are the changes they implemented to their business system when COVID crisis arise.
Now, let's go to international setting. The COVID-19 outbreak occurred in a context of sluggish global trade in an international setting, dragging on since 2008 to 2009 financial crisis. Governments takes the rapid spread of COVID-19, and the measures to contain it has had severe consequences for the world major economies. Most ambulant vendor merchants who are severely affected by the said crisis spread worldwide, including the residents in Africa, Asia, and South America in particular. They primarily rely on selling in the streets to suffice their daily needs. Unfortunately, 2 billion informal workers in the entire world, specifically on street sellers, lockdown have affected the whole world. Precisely, the 2 billion informal workers, vendors in Uganda, have taken to sleeping at markets to make a living while remaining disconnected from their families. Even in cities where there are a lot of street vendors, they are permitted to peddle on street, and in cities such as Accra, Los Angeles, New York City, and Mexico City, sellers claimed a 90% drop in income due to the decreased foot traffic.
Meanwhile, in national setting, daily wage earners and those employed in the informal sector are most impacted by this crisis. Informal workers engage in street vending, home-based work, waste picking, domestic jobs, and other short-term contracts. They may be undocumented, and they usually are classified as living just above the poverty line, and they may not qualify for or even seek government support in normal times. As such, they frequently are not registered with social protection programs. They tend to depend on less formal or unregulated financial services providers. Workers are worried about surviving this crisis. They look to the government for quick financial help and employment stability. So, the Philippine Alliance for Human Rights and In Defense of Human Rights and Dignity Movement Advocacy co-hosted the debate, shed light on the effects of COVID-19 on workers in both the official and informal sectors. Workers are worried about surviving this crisis. Yes, they need the government quick financial help and employment stability. The Philippine government also originally announced a statewide lockdown in March year 2020 to stop the spread of COVID-19. Ambulant merchants were banned 3.5 million Filipino workers in the informal economy, selling food on street corners in Metro Manila. And now, let us proceed in the local setting. So in the local setting, given the alarming state in the country brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak, so President issued the Section 16 of Republic Act number 716. It is also known as the Local Government Code that states that all government units shall ensure and promote the health and safety and preserve the comfort and convenience of the people. So Tagum City issued the Executive Order number 44, Section 24, Item number 13. The COVID-19 City Task Force, Public Safety and Law Enforcement Group shall ensure that there is no talipapa operating places other than the public market during the duration of the implementation of the community quarantine. So this rule was included in Executive Number Order number 45, which was published in May 15, 2020, as the city was about to place under in the GCQ. Furthermore, it is specified in Executive Order number 45, Section 23, in the item number 10, that ambulant food and non-food vendors are not allowed to sell in any place in the city, that all vendors were advised to vaccinate the area before the cleaning operation. So the sudden outbreak of the pandemic situation has been very harsh to the ambulant vendors who have exhausted their capital and earnings in trying to feed themselves during in this pandemic. Ambulant vendors face and discontinue from earning their livelihood. As a result, many ambulant vendors struggle to have been with their food. Most street vendors can't afford to put food on their tables after a few days of the non-working because they don't have enough money to save and to safely to rely on it. It is need to conduct a study in pertaining to the said topic. It is because to know the condition of the ambulant vendors due to the COVID-19 crisis. Again, the main purpose of this study is to recognize the impact that ambulant vendors experience on COVID-19 crisis, specifically in Tagum City. This is to collect information about how they view, how they adjust to this new normal. Additionally, this is also to search answers on what are the changes they implemented to their business system when COVID-19 arrives. The significance of this study looked through the experiences of ambulant vendors due to COVID-19 crisis. This significance also scopes first, local government of Tagum. The local government could get a copy of the results of the study for record purposes. Second is the vendors. The answer of the vendors in this research will give other vendors an idea of their experiences throughout the years that will help others to grow. Another is the school administrations. This study will provide information to the school administration about the ambulant vendors' experiences during the pandemic on how they face the hardship. Fourth is the public. This will give them an idea of what are the effects of COVID-19 to the livelihood of ambulant vendors. Public will be informed about the adjustments they experience, the changes on their business, and how these vendors view the situation. And lastly, the researchers. The researchers, this study provides them guidance to choose a research topic and to conduct a research all in relation in connection to this certain topic. I will present to you the three theories of this study. First, the person-environment fit theory. This means that it emphasizes on the interaction between the characteristics of a person and the environment, through which a person is not only gives impact on his environment, but also the environment affects person's characteristics. The suitability of this fit between a person and the environment has a big impact on individuals' behavior, motivation, and overall mental. Furthermore, persons' functioning may be aided if the fit is optimal. In other words, if it is unsuitable, the individual may experience maladaptation. Person environment fit research focuses explicitly on the match or congruence between individuals and the environment as a key determinant of well-being and reflectiveness, according to Christoph Brown, Zimmerman, and Johnson, year 2005. Recognizing the importance of this congruency, according to Arthur, Bell, and Villado 2006 noted that theoretically, the relation between fit and attitude is predicated on the reasoning that when there is fit, the environment affords individuals the opportunity to fulfill their needs. Additionally, this theory suggests that combination of individuals' behavior and its surroundings status produces adaptive change within the individual. Next theory is what we call the diffusion of innovation theory by Everett Rogers. It is one of the oldest social science theories. It originated in communication to explain how, over time, an idea or changes in product gains momentum and diffuses through a specific population or social system. The end result of this diffusion is that people, as part of a social system, adopt a new idea, behavior, or product. Adaptation means that a person does something differently than what they had previously. The key to adaptation rather is that the person must perceive the idea, behavior, or product as a new or innovative. It is through this that diffusion is possible. The manner in which innovations are transmitted to various segments of society, as well as the subjective attitudes around the inventions, have a significant role in determining how quickly diffusion or spreading occurs. And according to Halton, year 2021, marketers frequently employ the diffusion of innovation hypothesis to increase product uptake. In such circumstances, marketers typically identify a core group of early adopters who are fervent about the product. These early adopters are tasked with marketing the product's utility to a broader audience. Furthermore, appraisal theory, according to this theory, our interpretation of a situation causes an emotional response that is based on that interpretation. Lazarus specified two major types of appraisal methods. First, the primary appraisal, which seeks to establish the significance or meaning of an event, and the second appraisal, which assesses the ability of the individual to cope with the consequences of the event. In the specific context of emotion and stress, Lazarus described primary appraisals are judgments about the degree of potential harm or threat to well-being that a stressor might introduce. The perception of a threat then triggers the secondary appraisal, judgment of the options available to cope with the stressor, as well as perceptions of how effective such options will be. He also stated that cognitive activity involved in interpreting emotional context could be conscious or unconscious and may or may not take the form of conceptual processing. He stressed out that the quality and intensity of emotions are controlled through cognitive processes which mediate the relationship between the person and the environment through coping strategies, which in turn are the basis of the emotional reaction. The impact of COVID-19 crisis. The COVID-19 outbreak affects all segments of the population, and it is particularly detrimental to members of those social groups in the most vulnerable situations. Continues to affect populations, including people living in poverty situations, older persons, persons with disabilities, youth, indigenous people, and especially ambulant vendors. Early evidence indicates that the health and economic impacts of the virus are being borne disproportionately by poor people. These street vendors, acting as a sole bread earner, serve to be independent on their own cost for supporting their families. An impact on their line of business from any manner severely hampers their daily income making them helpless in their stand. Very little support is availed by them from government institutions or from any intermediaries, be it in NGOs or other associations. It is always predicted that they are able to have their own source of livelihood and hence would not face any difficulties in relation to earnings. But the same is counteracted by the street vendors when asked to them about the difficulties they encounter on daily basis. The recent situation of COVID-19 pandemic have altered as well as halted most of the street vendors' trade activities.
And the second related literature, which is the survival initiatives, in this study, the COVID-19 pandemic has deeply affected workers in the informal economy. During the March to April lockdown, when informal pop-up stalls and outdoor markets were closed, ambulant vendors quickly found alternatives to keep up to their livelihood. Some took and delivered orders from frequent buyers via phone, while others shifted to mobile trading, which requires walking from place to place seeking a random customers. They walked a bicycle or carried baskets loaded with food or small household consumable items and dodged local authorities. As they traversed neighborhoods, these vendors yelled the name of the goods to attract customers. The local police cannot accuse a moving vendor unless they catch the vendor transacting. However, these trading activities are accepted by communities and appear to work well for many urban dwellers because supermarkets are only suitable for the better. Last literature study, which is home environment, the majority of the ambulant vendors stated that the home environment had significantly improved. They had to cut their household spending by more than half. Over half of the vendors stated that their income had ceased during the lockdown, leaving them without funds to purchase rations at home. Human capital is also important for a variety of factors that affect individual well-being, such as life satisfaction and health. Some countries have implemented vending bans, making their situation difficult. When the lockdown occurred, ambulant vendors claimed that their families would starve to death if they were unable to work. The COVID-19 crisis will not affect all the families in the same way, but it is likely to have a greater impact on the children of failed vendors as well as toddlers who are especially sensitive to developmental inputs. Being at home and surrounded by the military may provide vendors with a sense of security and comfort in the face of potential health. Ambulant vendors were unable to trade as they had been in South Africa, Latin America, India, and Nigeria. Many of them are dissatisfied because they are unable to meet the needs of their families due to the lockdown, which has resulted in starvation.
And now let us proceed to the methodology. So this chapter showcases the methodology used in the study. So this chapter covers the research participants, research materials and instruments, research designs, and procedure. So this study identifies the process and designs that will be used and undergoing in the study regarding with the livelihood of ambulant vendors of Tagum City due to the COVID-19 crisis. So next is we will discuss about the participants of the study. So the participants of the study are the ambulant vendors of Tagum City. We will know their adjustment and changes in their business and the views to the COVID-19 crisis. So we researchers choose the ambulant vendors to participate properly and manage the perfect inquiry and to collect the data without unwanted happenings to take over. As we conduct our research, we will select 14 participants in the study, 7 for the hour in-depth interview and 7 for the focus group discussion. In selecting the participants, McKinsey 2006 stated that in qualitative study, having a fewer than 20 participants helps in the research establish a strong contact which improves a open and frank information. Sharing the researches will be utilized in proposing something. For the validity of our data, participants should be chosen based on the criteria that the research established. Ambulant vendors must have an experience in selling for more than 10 years. Furthermore, participants are bona fide residents of Tagum City, Davao del Norte. Next is we have the research materials and instrument. So this research study is qualitative by nature. We researchers will be utilizing interview questionnaires where an interviewer will ask us a series of verbal questions to obtain the verbal responses for the interviewee, generally about the impact of the COVID-19 to their livelihood. In qualitative research, our goal is to gain access to study participants' thoughts and feelings. With that, researchers will also use naturalistic observation in which researchers observe participants' behaviors in natural setting and simplify record what is seen and whatever what is seen. Next is we have the research designs and procedures. Our research design is qualitative study with phenomenological approach. The goal of qualitative phenomenological research is to describe the lived experience of the situation. According to Criswell, it is very important to know or to describe the lived experience of the research of the interviewee. It is meaning of the experience or behavior or the narrative. We researchers use this type of qualitative research since the study talks about the livelihood of amulet vendors due to the COVID-19 crisis. According to Silverman, it is cited in his work that methods used by qualitative researchers exemplify that they can grant a deeper understanding in social phenomena. Here are the following steps on how we gather our data. To begin, the researchers will write a letter of approval will be signed with the program head and the research committee. Next is the researchers will then use a propositive sampling to select our participants. After that, the participants are given an invitation letter outlining the study of the objectives. If confirmation is already official, the participants will be asked if they are willing to participate in the study by signing the concept from and discussing the interview schedule based on their vacant schedule in time to account for their participants' availability. Moreover, regardless of whether they reveal their identity or remain anonymous, the researcher will provide them with an assurance and privacy. Next is participants will be informed that the entire interview will be recorded using smartphones, and the researchers will make sure that each participant receives a copy of the transcript and interpretation of the response, as well as the opportunity to indicate which part of the data they do not want to be included in the data analysis. And lastly, the researchers consider the participant for the active participation by writing up the data and analyze their situation. The researcher will also discuss why the interview needs to be recorded, as well as technical difficulties that it entails. And we will ensure that participants of the study will be valid, confidential, and free of bias and misconceptions. And now, allow me to introduce to you our research question, main question with its sub questions. First main question, what are the challenges you have encountered during the COVID-19 pandemic? 1.1, describe the situation of your livelihood during early stages of lockdown. 1.2, describe a specific situation that greatly affect your livelihood during pandemic. 1.3, what aspect of your life is being directly affected as pandemic strike the cost of your livelihood? 1.4, what particular situation that made your decision to stop, continue, or look for alternative livelihood? 1.5, as pandemic affect your livelihood, how does it affect your family? The second main question is how do these challenges affect your livelihood? 2.1, what are the effects of these challenges to your livelihood? 2.2, how have these challenges impacted your livelihood? 2.3, how did your livelihood change during the pandemic? 2.4, how the government's guidelines and protocols affected you and your livelihood also. 2.5, how did the changes in your livelihood affected your income? Third main question, how did you cope up with the challenges that you have encountered? 3.1, describe the adjustments that you made during pandemic. 3.2, what are the strategies that you have employed to cope the situation? 3.3, cite a specific strategy that you have employed and how it addressed your problem. 3.4, how this strategy helped you adjust to the new normal. Lastly, 3.5, how did you completely handle the situation? The fourth and last main question, what are the insights that might be gained from these experiences? 4.1, share an insight or learnings that you have learned from your experience. 4.2, how do you feel about your situation right now? 4.3, what support did help you to overcome this challenge? 4.4, how did the support given to you helps you out turning the situation? 4.5, how do these experiences nurture or develop you as vendor? And that's all our presentation. I am Princess May Bersabal.
I am Thom Cervantes.
And I am Cristine Jane Cabales.
And our research entitled A Fight for Survival, the Impact of COVID-19 Crisis to the Ambulant Vendors in Tagum City.